You mentioned about where does China stand, and then of course we'll look forward to the next 5 years and the next year. What's the target and what where does China want to move its economy to? So Hussein Askary, thank you for joining us. Share with us your understanding of where does China stand in terms of the economy today?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Greetings to your guests too. I mean, I watched the government working report by Premier Li Keqiang yesterday, and today I followed the press conference of the economic team, and it's fascinating. One important thing to remember is that the Chinese development model is very important. It has certain fundamentals; they don't change. Although every 5 years has new features, every year has new policies, but the long term is very important. Now, the Chinese outlook is very, very scientific, but it is a people-centered model. It's not a market-centered model. What is good for the livelihood and living standards of the Chinese people is the benchmark. It's not the GDP numbers, it's not the market growth, although that is an indicator. Now, this means that on you can't count on how large the market is, the growth of the market, because we've seen in the United States, the market has been growing for decades, but the living standards of the people have not been growing, actually declining. So the second issue is the focus on the real economy, that we have a focus not on financial and monetary values, but on the real economic values of growth, productivity, and so on and so forth. So thank God China is led by engineers, not by bookkeepers. You don't allow bookkeepers to design policy, you allow the engineers to design the policy. And this is very, very important because you want to make a change in the real economic situation, increasing the productivity. The third important thing is you think long term. There are 5-year plans, there are 10-year plans, and there is the 100-year plans. And everything is consistent. So, but in every 5 year, every year, there are how to manage that long-term policy and design a policy for the conditions today, internal and external, that fit the long-term policy. And this is very important. I see this in every discussion these days in China. The fourth issue is the centralization of the decision, that all the processes, all the resources will be pooled towards these goals. And so these are important to remember. Now, what is new, and I think this is something which must be emphasized, in the next 5-year plan, we will see a completely different China, because the technologies you mentioned that are still in the incubator, these are in the cocoon, they're not butterflies yet, but they will become butterflies and come out and pollinate the whole economy. What we will see is a marriage between the high quality development concept and the new productive forces concept, that all these technologies will be not separate entities growing on their own. Mm-hmm. They will be completely integrated in the whole Chinese advanced industrial system. And we will see a revolutionary change where we have these high techs, the new technologies of the future, the traditional industry, the enormous level of scientific and technological and educational process. You have millions of new engineers. All these resources will be pooled together to create a completely new China. As I wrote yesterday on CGTN, China will leapfrog China, not the world. China has already leapfrogged the world, but China will leapfrog what we have known as China's.
What we have achieved.
So these are the major, yes. This is the general picture, the context in which we should look at the numbers today.
All right, thank you for the good summary there, Hussein. Claire, of course, one of the priorities for the government is to boost domestic demand or domestic consumption. Of course, the government work report, the Premier also mentioned about the investing in people. So based on your observation, what China is doing to improve the domestic situation so there will be a stronger demand, a stronger consumption?
Yeah, the idea of consumption is not simply that what people buy.
Yeah, let's have a Claire.
People buy. It's the whole economy.
Yeah. Let's have Claire in Shanghai.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, that was not for me.
No, not at all. To be honest, Hassan, I found your analysis quite inspirational because I think I'm experiencing what you're articulating. It's 7:45 on a Friday and our office is still full. That is how the Chinese economy is at the moment. I listened to the finance minister this afternoon and I really liked what he said. We're at 2.8% of GDP is being invested in R&D currently, but in the 15th five-year plan, that amount is going to increase by 7% each year. So if I could give sort of 3 words that I think summarize what the 15th five-year plan will attempt to do, is we're going to move from hardware, which is 2000 to 2010 in China, development of the railway, to software, which I see as sort of 2010 to 2025. That's putting in the infrastructure, the technological infrastructure. And now I think we're really moving to everywhere. It's hardware, infrastructure, software, the IT revolution. And now the combination of those two are going to take China everywhere. Every time I travel, I keep seeing it's the camera, it's the DJI Osmo Pocket.
Yeah.
So there's brand new industries in China that I've seen being stimulated. I was just in Hainan over the holiday and it was packed with content creators. China's created these brand new industries. I mean, not just tourism. I mean, I used to stay in Lingshui and it was empty. Now it's full. It's full of yachts, people canoeing, people riding their horse. There was a lot of people galloping on the beach. I'm like, what is this about? It's about the new 20 billion USD microfilm industry that has taken off in China. So I think this is huge stimulus to the economy. It's a combination of good software, hardware, and now Chinese products are going everywhere. I call it the BYD BRI. It's you can build your dreams in China. I don't mean the car, I mean the ecosystem of innovation cultivated from the battery at the center to the car and the boats that are enabled by that battery, to the LNG ships that carry those products to the ports of Brazil, to Felixstowe in the UK, and to Cape Town. You know, there used to be a golden triangle, you know, Cape Town, Cairo, China, that used to be the Persian Silk Road that dominated global trade in 1750. I say we're back to the future. You know, we're back to business circa 1750 with this China's creating the innovations in Shenzhen, like it used to create the silk, the porcelain, the tea, and it's going out down the Belt and Road. There's new innovative products coming out in China facilitated by this R&D investment.
We're John here. Yeah, I mean, you know, given what you know, Hussein and Claire talked about, you know, there's a, you know, we mentioned a little bit yesterday. You know, there are a lot of factors, a lot of players in the Chinese economy. You know, the interaction among them will create something, this synergy, something completely new, brand new, new drivers, new phenomena even. Yeah. That's, you know, very promising.
Well, this is the synergistic effect of combination of important factors, production factors. The infrastructure is important, market competition is important, pool of talents are important, availability of VC capital is important. You know, all of these things working together for some time, and inevitably it will lead to some breakthroughs. I think we've already seen the DeepSeek moment. There will be many more DeepSeek moments like this in the future. I think one thing very unique for foreigners to for a better understanding of China is the role of the NDRC here in China. We have the committee chairman giving part of the press conference this afternoon, and he was talking about creating 6 new industries and 6 new future industries. So we're talking about 6 industries here. And this is something probably people don't quite understand. This organization, China's government, is not just in the business of governing. It's also in the business of incubating an industry. You're talking about VC capital incubating a company. Here, the Chinese government incubates an industry, right, through an industrial policy. And this is actually quite rightfully correct. At the early stage of an infant industry, its nascent stage, you need some government support to help it at least get off the ground. And these are cutting edge, rising, emerging industries. He's talking about each one of them over 10 trillion yuan scale, market scale. So basically he's talking about creating 6 new 10 trillion yuan industries in the next 5 years. This is breathtaking in my view. If you look at what these things are, like semiconductor, like AI, like aerospace and aeronautics, like robotics, 6G, and all these things are emerging new technologies. There'll be a lot of money investing in this, and we have a very vibrant market of VC capital. Money chase where the opportunities are. So, hopefully these new investments will somehow also pull up the rest of the economy. I've been talking about this for quite some time, and it seems to me there's a sort of a disconnect between the value add, high value add, high tech, cutting edge industries part of the economy, and also there was this traditional economies. How to build a bridge among them so that the traditional industries would also be transformed and also be participating in opportunities provided by these new investments in these new industries. That's a challenge, and hopefully we can do much better in this area.
Talking about the AI plus strategy. Basically every industry, maybe traditional industry in particular, of course, with the application of AI, and then all of a sudden the productivity increased, by times. So, Clare, you have seen probably this AI industry, basically the application, everywhere in daily lives, and of course that lay foundation probably for this emerging pillar industry, because they are, in a way, inherently interconnected, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I've really seen it in our work, because in the old days, China used to buy technology in. Now it's sending technology out. Particularly, I've seen 3 sectors where this is really happening. One of the biggest deals we've done in the firm just at the end of last year was in fintech. So Chinese fintech is now powering banking transactions globally. Another space is biotech. As you say, the AI plus in biotech is really making a difference. There's a lot of onshoring of scientists. Chinese scientists who used to be abroad are coming back because of the government's policy to use AI to catalyze breakthroughs in early stage drug development. So we're seeing, and then of course the third area is really in the low altitude economy. In the old days, Shushindor, I used to go on your TV program 15 years ago, and you'd be watched by my mom and my brother. Now every time I go on, you get phone calls from Cape Town, you get phone calls from Nigeria, from Maryland, from Denmark, because in the old days, people weren't expecting great ideas to come out of the Middle Kingdom from China. Now China is a critical part of every corporation's growth strategy. It's no longer somewhere where you lose profit. It's somewhere which is maybe contributing upwards of 25% of global companies' profit. So people are completely going through this restructuring of their boards, and AI is definitely speeding things up. We have a lot more time to talk directly to each other now. So people are, there's two real catalysts to decision making. People are deciding that China is a central component of their business plan in 2026 to 2030. And then they're having to decide how to reorientate their board and who to recruit for the China century. So AI, in a way, is the AI innovations that are coming out of China are catching the eye of global corporations, and they're trying to learn how to, as you like, sort of grab the moment as the walls come down in business and the world comes into China. By walls coming down, I mean it's easier to get to China now. 80 countries are visa-free. And the world is coming in because the competitors for foreign companies isn't China. China's the collaborator. Their competitor is the other foreign companies who want to work with China to go down the Belt and Road in conjunction with their AI innovation Belt and Road. Mm-hmm. So to be honest, my job has completely done a backflip over 20 years in China, because before we were bringing the ideas in, now we're piggybacking on Chinese companies as we take our ideas out.
Yeah.
So it is a complete change for me.
Yeah, the complete change of development. Hussein Askary, if you look at the new emerging pillar industries, I mean, what you said earlier reminded me of this, planning with the foresight, what do we have, and based on what do we have now and where we want to go, and then the new emerging industries. I mean, how important is that, in terms of shaping the China's economic future?
Yeah, I think, China, today, I think it was the Minister of Commerce who said, the next China is still China. And because China, as the largest industrial power in the world, it will emerge even stronger when you integrate these new technologies, these future technologies, which are no longer in the laboratories, not in the incubators. Now they will come out and affect every production process in every sector of the Chinese industry, even the Chinese society. I mean, even in terms of consumption, we will see new patterns of consumption. We'll see new areas of consumption that as the living standard of the people increases, we have like 400, 500 million middle-class people. They will probably become 1 billion people, 800 million middle-class Chinese or 1 billion middle-class Chinese. This is an enormous market. And then the potential for the growth by integrating new technologies, bringing infrastructure, logistics to third and fourth tier cities to the urban centers, from the urban centers to the rural centers, that the growth in consumption in these areas will increase faster than the well-off first tier cities. This is one of the surprising things which was introduced, that the disposable income increase is higher in the rural areas of China today than it is in the urban areas in China. So the potential, which has been lagging behind in many parts of China, will now come to fruition with introduction of new technologies. But I think what the effect this will have also on the world economy is that the Chinese industries will become faster, more efficient, more cost effective, consume less energy per unit produced, which is very, very important for the whole carbon economy and fossil fuel economy. Because with new technologies, ironically, you will consume less energy per unit produced because you are using smarter tools, you are using smarter technologies and methods. And so this will be very, very transformative of the Chinese economy, and it will have enormous spillover in the world because China is interested in sharing its technology, exporting its technology, its breakthroughs with others. And this will have ramifications for all the Belt and Road nations, other nations. International corporations will benefit from the enormous research and development taking place in China. They will, integrate that into their own production, like German companies, French companies, even American companies. Everybody would want to tap into that system. Right. But it will be a very, very compact. I just want to emphasize one thing. These are not separate technologies working on their own and growing. They will be integrated into the whole system of advanced production in China. This was emphasized. The word integration has been emphasized by all the Chinese officials. So we have to look at it as one compact process rather than different technologies, different markets growing on their own separately.
Right. Well, speak of tapping the Chinese market, John, if you look at the year 2025, for example, German firms, their investment in China reached a new high. And also European companies, they are investing also more in China. And, the saying is like, given this low cost and efficiency of the Chinese global supply chain, basically, you want to be part of that to basically, on a par with your Chinese rivals, competitors.
Right.
So you have to be part of the ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, I think you're absolutely right. Cost is a big factor here, but I think it's more than just cost. In other words, China itself is a very large market. For those multinational companies, you have an operation without being based in China, designing products here in China. It's very difficult to compete in this market, right? So you want to be competitive in this market and also take advantage of the resources and the low-cost engineering capabilities here in China. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Like Volkswagen, they're doing here in China. And other companies also doing this. I think on top of this, there's also the issue of the geopolitical stability here. Here in China, it's peaceful, right? And
not at war with anyone.
We're not at war with anyone. We don't see missiles flying over above us. I think overall it's a very peaceful and also very secure place. I think that's also becoming increasingly a factor here. You think about this. I mean, Israel is supposed to be, they call it a nation of innovation. That's what they call it, right? A nation of innovation. But a nation of innovation constantly under war, that's not going to fly, in my view, right? I mean, you have those great Israeli companies over there, but what are they doing right now? I don't think they're going to office right now, right? And so I think that's also a very important reason why the China market is becoming increasingly more attractive to those cutting-edge companies who want to compete in the frontiers of new technology development, the frontiers of new market expansion, and frontiers, of course, of great opportunities.
Right. I think Claire also probably would agree with that. You want to be part of the global supply chain somehow. You probably have to have a presence in China, and of course, when we talk about the challenges facing the Chinese economy with it domestically, of course, some of the consumption, if you want to increase, it takes time. You cannot finish or achieve that goal like in several months or 1 year. It takes time. And also globally, there are tariff, tax restrictions, and of course, instability, uncertainty globally. But as John mentioned, here in China, it's like a oasis in the desert. So it's that is actually an advantage, for investors to be in China if you want to be part of the global supply chain.
Shindor, I think that is an excellent point because, you can't build your dreams in a country where you're losing sleep with the nightmares of travel. I've been dealing all week with people who are stuck in the Middle East. And, we just flew somebody out from Doha to Addis to Hong Kong. Another friend had to wait 2 days in Dubai and pay a lot of money for a flight back to Shanghai. There's still 20,000 people, 20,000 Chinese alone left in the Middle East. I don't know if you saw the WeChat channel of the Chinese construction worker at the top of 100 floors on a metal beam. He was building a building, and with his other hand, while he was hanging on to the metal pillar, he was filming the drones landing below him and setting fire to a building.
Yes.
You see, that is just, for me, typifies the Chinese mindset. I'm here to build 100-foot buildings, so I'm going to get on with it while you throw your drones at my feet. This is what makes China an oasis of innovation, because you're not getting past the Himalayas. You've got from the Himalayas to Shanghai on Sea, and you've got this basin or crucible of innovation that has been largely uninterrupted for 5,000 years, and it's created fertile ground for innovation, which we're now capitalizing on in our company. I realize that when I go to work every day, I'm on the 36th floor here of the Shanghai World Financial Center. It wasn't even here when I arrived in Shanghai 20 years ago. I am really humbled by the people I see working in China. It motivates you as a foreigner to work twice as hard. Because if you like, in the West, we have work, and then we do scuba diving, and we do skiing, we have hobbies. But in China, work sort of is your hobby. Business is your black run. The entertainment is integral to the operation of your company. And that's why China is so exciting, because you don't need to worry about whether a drone is landing outside your window. You don't need to worry if somebody's going to take your phone off the desk. You don't need to worry about the things that are closing down 50% of the brain of other innovators in countries with governments have forgot that leaders are meant to be servants of the people. And if your country or your company has been hijacked by a group of entitled frat boys, you really need to think about the composition of a country that will be competitive in the innovative Chinese century. And I'm very happy I am in China, because when I listen to my friends on the phone, frankly, I am disturbed by the incompetence that we are seeing in other countries at the moment. And history will be the judge of the country that showed that leadership meant servantship rather than self-interest. So that's why I'm very happy to be in China. It will grow at 5% because nobody will be infringing its borders. And that's why I think the government does make the priority, has the right priorities. It's a serious government. And those are two words that should be synonymous in 2026. So I really look forward to continuing my business here. The person who stays latest in our office is always the boss. Bosses in other countries are bosses so they can go home early. Bosses in China are here to show leadership, not lackadaisical interest. So I am very interested. China's going to do fine, Xu Xindor. That's why I like coming on your program, because I know this country is credible when it comes to competitive corporate.
Right. Okay, John, you want to jump in?
I think, the history, you want to be in Paris in 19th century, in New York City in 20th century, but in 21st century, Clare is the right place in Shanghai. That's the place to go. That's the place to go in the 21st century.
It's true, yes. John. It's true.
Well, final words, Hussein Askary, the future of China?
Yes, sure. Yeah, no, I agree with Claire and John that the world is in big trouble. I think China can show leadership in establishing peace and development in the world through its model of also on global governance. But remember what President Xi Jinping said in the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road. He said, China will only do well when the world is doing well. And when China does well, the world will do even better. And I think this is very important, because we need to solve problems in the world, because China cannot exist only as a peaceful, growing island in a world of misery and war. And we should all work together. But I think China has shown the way how to do that, how to establish a world of peace and prosperity.
Yes, thank you, Hussein there, and Claire and John in the studio. With that, we are coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks again to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app or on YouTube. I'm Xu Jindor. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.